Isn't it wild how immediately after Worlds ends, everybody wants to shift the conversation to the following year? I mean, I don't blame people because, as we'll touch on in this list, there are a few things that happen during Worlds that do take the attention off of it. But I want to put a closing ribbon on it, especially since I wasn't here for about a week and a half and all I had was pre-recorded videos, so we never really got to talk about the last few things of Worlds and just wrapping everything up. So I want to do a video in the style of Drifter, who is a famous Call of Duty YouTuber that did a series called The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, where he would talk about the latest Call of Duty and new games and just put it in those three categories. Break every aspect that he could down of the game, but let's do that for Worlds. Seems like a good way to wrap everything up, right? Because RosterMania technically starts next week, and everybody will quite literally forget about Worlds of 2024 until Worlds of 2025 from the middle of November all the way through August. So let's do something that not a lot of people do for whatever reason. Let's start with the good. Knockout stage. Yeah, I think it's important to note the distinction between elements of Worlds that are controllable versus non, and who's responsible for them. When it comes to the quality of games in knockout stage, the quality of best of fives, honestly, we're kind of luck of the draw based on the teams that are in that year. Did we send the right teams to knockouts? To which this year, it feels like, yes, we, for the most part, sent the right teams. And it created some incredible best of fives. We got the right bracket draw, which there is an element of randomness to it, but everybody seemed to be happy with it. There were a few blowout games, a few blowout series that we fully expected to come, but you always want somebody to step up to the plate and challenge the status quo and make things a little bit more interesting. FlyQuest, at least in the quarterfinals, was that team for many people, driving Gen G to a 5-game series, which made up for the fact that T1 versus Top was supposed to be close, but was not. Which in hindsight, now it's like, okay, yeah, T1 went on to win the entire thing, fine. But in the moment, it was like, oh no, this isn't good. Same thing with Hanwha Life and LNG, two teams that honestly kind of collapsed whenever you were expecting them to live up to their potential. But the important part was it was entertaining. By the time we got to semifinals, you had a BLG versus Weibo series that unfortunately was not all that close, expected, but T1 versus Gen G absolutely delivered. The finals between BLG and T1 1000% delivered. Faker's performance in finals might go down as the single best individual performance in any series of Worlds maybe ever. I mean, yes, games 1 through 3 in that series were stomps, but Faker just stepped up whenever his team needed him most, when their backs were against the wall, and everybody else came up with him. I do put the games of knockout stage in the good category, even though I would say that it probably doesn't compare to what we got at Worlds 2022. I think that was just one of those years where every single series, and that was undoubtedly good. Last year, I mean, we had a good semifinal. We had some good quarterfinals matchups, but for the most part, I think the knockout stage last year was very much a letdown. So for this year to have as many good storylines as we did, definitely a positive. Another good, which I think this one might be contested to many people, and that's the meta. Were there overpowered picks? Yes. Yone was a problem, as was Aurora. But one thing I've really come to appreciate with Worlds as time has gone on and my understanding of League of Legends has gotten better, it's that giving teams an entire month on the patch to scrim, to try and work things out, really does create some unique situations where you're then going into series being like, okay, how is somebody going to address these particular picks that we have seen become a problem as time has gone on? And the extra time allows for innovation. I mean, I hate to keep harping on FlyQuest, but like, they were the team that kind of allowed that to happen. Lane swaps in general being a thing. I know some people were critical of it. I like the fact that we had lane swaps in this. It allowed some of the mid-tier teams to catch up to some of the top teams in ways that really didn't feel all that gimmicky. It doesn't feel like lane swaps of old from what I've been told, so I found it to be an enjoyable experience. There were enough unique champions picked throughout the tournament that I felt okay. The top teams are always going to try and stay around the meta and not deviate all that much. And if we're going to have two champions that are constant pick ban, like 100% rate, Yone is a fun champion to watch, so is Aurora. Like, I get from the competitive point of view, you want to eliminate as many OP picks, but at the end of the day, when the casual audience is watching, yeah, Yone's a fun champion to watch, as is Aurora, given the fact that she can bounce around in her ult. So I will give the meta a good rating. Flirting around the middle, could go to meh, but still good. The broadcasts are the next thing. And I say the broadcasts because it's not just the main one anymore. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably watching the main thing because that's where the majority of viewership was, depending on your language. And the YouTube viewing experience is still the best out there. It's not even close. Anybody that tries to tell me that Twitch is better for the community in the chat, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. But this was the Worlds where we notably saw the broadcast itself on Twitch get outpaced by Cadril and the various co-streamers around the world, which I will say created some incredible content throughout the tournament. Co-streamers we already know are a thing, but like it just adds more because you then watch the series live. If you want to watch it with a co-streamer, you can. If you don't, you can then watch the playback or like rewatch the entire series through the co-streamer, and it creates this content loop that allows you to kind of get through the entire day beyond just when the games are played, and then be ready for the next day as you kind of like, okay, like I missed this the first time I watched it. It gives you a unique perspective to watch it again, and it's fun. I'll actually lump in the time zone with like the broadcast. The fact that all this was in Europe was of great benefit to pretty much everybody around the world. I think it was a little bit late for Korea and China, but for the West, obviously in Europe, prime time for them. For the East, it was in the morning for us, but given that next year we're going to have 3 international events, only one of which is going to be in a time zone friendly to us in the US, which is going to be MSI held in Canada, I greatly appreciate having a full month of Worlds because we are not going to be able to enjoy Worlds next year in the same way that we are now for North American fans. It's just the sad reality of Worlds being in China or Korea. But also on that front, I do want to call out some of the content that came out before Worlds. You used to see Riot do like high level dive episodes and other things rating like the top 20 players. It felt like the majority of content pre-Worlds, hyping everything up, did come from I Will Dominate, from Cadril, and all the co-streamers that then obviously were telling the storylines during the tournament as well. The videos that came out of the community pre-tournament hyping everybody up were really, really good and built up the excitement coming into the tournament. So 100% from the content creator front, both on Riot side and just like the general league content creators. 10 out of 10, A+, loved it. Want to make sure we do this every year, make small improvements, and keep growing. It's awesome. My final good one is actually the player personalities that I think came through this year more so than in the past. Look, it has been no secret that at least in the West and then parts of the East as well, we've struggled with player personalities and trying to make stars out of players. I got to talk to Gen G CEO Arnold at the beginning, or I think midway through this year around like Olympics time. And one thing he noticed that he wished players would stream more and let their personalities get out there. And obviously during the tournament, that's next to impossible to do. But one of the times that players do get to try and show a little bit of personality is during the interviews. And granted, most of this good point is coming from T1, the Guma Croissant moment, as well as the Faker Merci moment. But even in other interviews, it felt like players allowed themselves to just be caught up in the moment more in both the highs and the lows, which I think is a really important step to players just opening up to us fans, which makes us relate to them a little bit better, which can turn them into superstars beyond just really good players and make names for yourselves that people want to see back at Worlds in the following year. So kudos to the players for coming out of their shells a little bit. Please continue to do that. It's really important to make sure that we can get narratives out there as like press and media to try and like highlight you, because it, by all means, when you give us an easy clip that we can make on TikTok without like obviously trying too hard to clickbait it, makes it easy to talk about. And then all of a sudden, like, trust me, I like TikTok culture this Worlds was incredible, between like the T1 fans going nuts, Cadril fans going nuts. Like, I feel like I got more LoL esports and like Worlds coverage from just like general people like showing interest this year than any other year in the past. And it's not like these videos just have like 1 or 2 likes. We're talking like 10 to 20,000 likes a video from creators, not even creators, just people that have like 20, 30 followers, upwards of like 100. Like, the culture is there on TikTok beyond what we already see on Twitter and YouTube, obviously. So keep the stuff up, players. Like, you'd be surprised how well it blends in, and we can start to make some next generation superstars out of everybody. It'd be great. I think that's enough of the good, though. Let's talk about the bad at least a little bit. This is going to be an NA gripe, and that's fine. I accept responsibility for the backlash that comes my way on this one. Dude, I get that having 4 LPL teams and 4 LCK teams is like the standard going forward and will always be the thing, but dear God, dude, do we get pummeled for anybody outside the top 1 or Team Liquid a little bit top 2 seed in North America. Like, for NA and EU, anybody outside our number 1 seeds is just like getting clobbered at Worlds as of late. It's not even close, which by all means, like, that's on us to get better and improve. But like, Fnatic could not step up when they needed to most. Same with Team Liquid, 100 Thieves. Oh God, dude, worst North American performance at Worlds. I'm not going to beat a dead bush. Mad Lions losing the GAM, which, hey, by all means, good for GAM. Good for the PCS continuing to step up. Well, I guess I say PCS because now Vietnam is part of the PCS. Before anybody like comes to me, it's like they're VCS. It's like VCS doesn't exist anymore. It's just our depth beyond our top teams in the West is still a problem. It is still bad and still needs work. I don't know exactly how we fix this long term. It's been the age-old question of how do we catch up to the East, but it's rough out there. It's really rough out there. On the Riot side, both production and FanFest. I don't mean like the broadcast, but like there's, I mean, two examples that are just so easy to point out are just like the ball situation that happened twice. And it's like, how does that type of thing happen? And there were just small moments in the broadcast where you could tell like the laying off of staff, the less people that were involved there caused some issues, and just like small moments that, you know, wouldn't think would be a problem, but they start to add up a little bit over time. The impacts of the layoffs earlier this year really were felt at Worlds at points, which I'm sure might alleviate itself as time goes on and they get used to running with what is a bare bones crew. Either way, some hiccups there that just, you know, you hope you eliminate for next year. I wouldn't call it ugly, but it was just like, it was a bad showing at times. The FanFest was another bad one because, like, you compare it to last year, I think Alan Walker did a full concert out in Korea. They had like that big Timo moment. You saw a bunch of videos, a bunch of pictures, Riot spotlighting it, and it kind of being this like massive cultural thing in Korea, but it didn't really feel like I don't know if it's just like those videos and like the social media impact didn't reach me over here in America like it did last year, but it seemed like FanFest was kind of a letdown compared to the prior year. And I mean, even comparing the Worlds 2022, where you had like the 2 days prior, where you had all these activations, all these people around, people making content around it. I didn't really see much content coming from FanFest, which is a little weird. But my final bad, and I know this is partially out of Riot's control, something that I hope that maybe they could implement harsher restrictions on, but RosterMania happening during Worlds sucks. It takes away from the tournament a little bit, regardless of whether people like it or not. Knowing that like immediately after a team loses, like there's going to be RosterMania details that happen just sucks. Can't even revel in the loss for just like a little bit of time. You can't sit there and sulk the moment for, I don't know, more than like 10 minutes before it's like, hey, X player is exploring options, or they were probably going to get cut, or they knew they were going to get cut after the tournament anyways. It's like, oh, dude, that really kind of undermines it a little bit, but there's really not much Riot can do about it. Before I go to my ugly, I do want to call it two greats. I save these two things for like their own independent category that goes well above good. They're just phenomenal. The first was the opening ceremony. My reaction to it is out on this channel. If you haven't seen it, go right ahead and watch it. If you haven't seen the opening ceremony, please go do so. Still here cemented itself as the single greatest League of Legends song of all time for me. Like, I don't think any, like, Awaken was number one for me for a long period of time, even more than Legends Never Die, even more than Rise. Still here takes it. That single song, like, was just incredible. The intro from Paint the Town Blue was amazing. Go watch it if you haven't already. It was directed by the dude that did, I believe, the London closing ceremonies for the Olympics, as well as the Grammys, and you could tell the difference of, like, what looked good for the audience and for us, and it just, whoever this guy was, hire similar people to them in the countries where Worlds is going to be held going forward, because this was amazing. It's easily up there, probably tied with 2019 for me in terms of favorite Worlds opening ceremonies. We'll see come next year whether it tops 2019 or not as time goes on. And my other great one is the teasers, the opening videos, like those 6 to 7 minute things that told like the storyline of each individual matchup that would come out a few hours before the series. What else am I gonna say? They're incredible. To everybody that works on them, keep up the phenomenal work. And finally, we have to talk about the one really ugly thing, which luckily Riot has commented on the media day that they had just before Worlds Finals, saying that this should not be an issue going forward, or at least not to the same extent. And that was the fact that this tournament did not truly felt like it began until the knockout stage. That's not saying that the Swiss stage wasn't fun to watch, that the games weren't entertaining. They were. But you could tangibly feel the difference between 300 people in the studio and the 5,400 that were at Madison Square Garden's Hulu Theater at the time. Go back and watch the footage if you haven't done so already, because dear God, is it a night and day difference between the two. Even last year, where it was like, I think 1,800 capacity in Korea for Swiss stage, it makes a big difference for all of us watching on broadcast, for it to feel like it's a larger than life event, because that's what Worlds is. And by all means, it felt that way come finals. It felt that way come knockout stage when we were in France, but not having that for Swiss stage. And that's not saying it has to be in a 7,000 person arena. It doesn't. But it cannot be in front of 300 people. That was unacceptable. And it didn't feel good the entire time knowing that, yeah, this is where the LEC is played every day. Like I said, Riot has promised that they're going to fix it. Their word was that they used the LEC studio to save money that they could use elsewhere in the tournament, to which I would say, don't do that again. I'm willing to take sacrifices elsewhere. I mean, you can even keep quarterfinals similar to what you did in Worlds 2022 in like that smaller venue, and then move it up for semis if you truly need to. I'm sure you made enough money from that Faker Ari skin to be able to fund it. If not, then you really need to consider how you earn your revenues in LoL esports, because we should have enough money to be able to do it, considering these events sell out like wildfire. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to monetize a stadium full of people ever, especially given the demand for it. How can we not make that feasible? But alas, that was the only ugly that I have from this total tournament. Overall, where would I rank this event? Everybody's going to have their different opinions. Everybody's going to be biased on what they like, what they're looking for out of these tournaments. And I think my number one is still probably going to be Worlds 2022. Everything about that tournament just felt like it was peak, other than the fact of it being peak bad performance for North America. That was tragic to watch, but everything else around that was good. And I would probably tie this up there with 2019. 2019 felt special because of the European run. This one felt special because T1 was kind of coming back into form. The opening ceremony, again, absolutely incredible. But I would easily say this was a top 3 Worlds all time if you ignore like that one really, really ugly part of it. At least that I've been watching, which again is consistently since like 2018 on. And unfortunately, like 2018, despite being like a phenomenal tournament, being in China makes it really difficult to watch. Or Korea, I think in 2018. No, it was 2019 that they... No, yeah, 2018 was Korea. Either way, next year we're in China, so won't be able to watch it all that much live, but it should still be a fun time. Hope y'all enjoyed all of my Worlds coverage this year. If you haven't already done so, subscribe, because I'm going to have a bunch of commentary videos coming out as we head into the LTA. I still have to break down the LTA, the LCK's new format, a bunch of other things that we want to talk about. If there's anything that you want me to cover in the off season that you think that I haven't touched, or that you think would make an interesting video, be sure to put it down in the comments. I got some time that we might be able to make it work. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you for all your continued support, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.